Hi sailors, and welcome back to a new podcast here on explorenorth.no. I'm your host Jon Amtrup. This time we are returning to the lovely Ella in the Arctic. She is weatherbound in St. Paul on the other side of the world. She has just finished the Northwest Passage, and solo she's done it on her own, sailed the whole Northwest Passage on her own. And that is a huge achievement. So we're gonna listen to Ella and be inspired to do awesome things in a sailboat, because you can. Hi, it's time for a new podcast, and it looks like it's Northwest Passage week here on Explore North. We had Jesus, lost my words. Novara on the last podcast, and now we have a record-breaking British young girl on the other line, and she's been here before. Hi, Ella.
Hi, Jon. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, really nice to see you, and congratulations with the record.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it doesn't, I don't think it's sunk in yet, I probably won't until I get home, but yeah, it was, something pretty cool.
Because are you the 15th, or has there been 15 that has done the solo?
I think I'm the 15th, yeah.
You are the 15th.
And the third woman.
And the third woman, and the first from Britain.
Yes, yeah.
And definitely the youngest.
Same age as Tamara Klink, who did it this year as well.
She's the same age as you.
She's 28 as well,
nice. Yeah. Did you cross the finish line side by side?
No, unfortunately, when I ran the boat aground in Chuck, she got ahead. So she crossed the finish line about a day before me. But yeah, very close.
Very close.
Very close. She was second then, yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't really...
setting the records was never the focus of the voyage.
That was not the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get back to the grounding, because that was... I'm guessing it was sort of the biggest low on the whole trip.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because you've been on the go for over 100 days now.
Yes, yeah. I left England at the end of May, and it's coming up to the end of September now. So it's been a pretty long summer, yeah.
Yeah. And if you could summarize it, how has it been?
It's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but also one of the most magical experiences I could have ever asked for. Yeah.
Because you sailed to Greenland first?
I sailed around the top of northern Iceland.
Yeah.
So originally, when I left England, the plan was to attempt a solo circumnavigation of the Arctic Circle, potentially non-stop. However, when I was rounding northern Iceland, I had an electrical fire on board, which I made the decision after putting the fire out to pull into Grimsey on an island off the north coast of Iceland in order to make sure that all systems were still good. Yep. So that sort of denounced the non-stop aspect of it. And then when I rounded southern Greenland, I had heating failure and AIS failure. So then I stopped in Greenland as well to fix those issues. And then it was across to Canada, Pond Inlet, and then through the Northwest Passage, and then down to Nome.
Yeah. Did you ever figure out how the fire started?
Yes. So I believe what happened was, God, there've been so many problems on this trip. What happened originally was the helm station in the cockpit. So obviously on Yeva, we've got a helm station inside and a helm station outside. The helm station outside fell off. The wheel came disconnected during a storm I was riding out. sort of east of Iceland, and I opened the hatch to go and pick up the wheel so that it wouldn't fall overboard. At which point a wave broke into the cockpit and flooded down the companionway. And it ended up getting one of my USB charging ports wet. And that's what caught fire.
Yeah.
So.
It doesn't take much, does it?
No, it was a bloody big wave too. So.
Yeah, that's yeah, but because the wave broke the rudder off, or the pedestal?
So the essentially what happened was where the wheel sort of screws into a thread where the woodruff key sits, the knob that keeps the wheel attached to the thread had come off, which allowed the wheel to then slide off as well.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, luckily for me, the knob, the wheel, and the woodruff key were all still floating in the water in the cockpit. So I managed to collect them all and put it all back together.
Very rare that you actually get to keep all the parts if something breaks, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I do have spare woodruff keys on the boat, so that wasn't the end of the world. But the knob for the thread, when I put it back on, I put it on with a load of Loctite to stop that from happening again.
Yeah. And how was the storm? The bad weather, was it a storm outside Cape Farewell?
Yes, we had about 40 knots of wind, about 6 meter swells coming around Cape Farewell. So that was pretty miserable. I think it's rare to be able to get from northern Iceland all the way around southern Greenland without hitting bad weather at some point, though, because it's such a lengthy sort of passage. So it was sort of inevitable, but yeah, it was fine. It was, we just rode it out. There was a lot of lying in the fetal position in the bed, waiting for it to end. But it wasn't the worst experience, that one. It was all right. Yeah.
It must have been, not necessarily, but good training for the lack of sleep we were going to experience in the Northwest Passage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, God, sleep has been a rarity for most of the summer. So obviously when the boat's sailing, I never sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time. So, around the equipment failures and being in port fixing those, at least I did manage to catch up on rest at intervals along the way. And same thing in the Northwest Passage. There were some times when I was in harbour hiding from storms and bad weather where I managed to catch up on a bit more rest. But it's been predominantly 20-minute sleeps for the last 4 months. So, yeah.
And you were doing 20-minute sleep amongst ice too?
No, anywhere around the ice, I just wasn't sleeping at all. The longest passage I had in the ice without a sleep was just under 40 hours of just hand steering through the ice to get to an anchorage where I then managed to catch up on some sleep afterwards.
Jesus. How's the worst thing, not the worst thing, I've done similar things, but not among ice and not alone. But I think the mental thing is some of the hardest.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been such a mental challenge, a mental game the whole way through. Luckily for me, I have an amazing shore team that were always there to pick me up or send over messages or, give me a boost. But it's definitely been, very mentally challenging to try and find motivation to keep going or try and find highs during the low moments. At the moment, actually, I'm probably having the toughest mental struggle of the whole trip right now because I'm on St. Paul Island. I came in to hide from a storm that's been blowing through yesterday and today still. But now looking at the weather forecast, there's not a single weather window suitable for me to leave the port here as far forward as the forecast can see. Stuck.
Oh, shit. And how far is that forecast? 14 days?
Yeah.
A lot of things can happen and will happen in 14 days.
For sure. But I need at least a 48-hour window to get to Dutch Harbour. Yeah. And then I still have to get from Dutch Harbour all the way along the Aleutians to Homer to lift the boat for the winter. Yeah. And at the moment, obviously, it's very much the end of the season here. So these storms are more frequent and more violent. And obviously, you don't leave port to head out into conditions where I know I'd be putting a storm jib up. No. But at the moment, it's a mental game of wanting to be done and go home.
Yeah.
And just being stuck. Yeah.
I can understand that. And there's no place, no way you can leave the boat in St. Paul.
We're looking at it. So the crane operator arrives back on the island from his holiday leave on Friday.
Oh.
So there is a crane, but the issue is that we're not sure there's any sort of boat stands. Well, there definitely aren't any boat stands to sit Yeva in. So it would depend if we can come up with a makeshift solution of maybe resting her on tires or resting her on some of the unused floats that sit, that make the pontoons float here. Maybe we could make a sort of cradle. But the issue, obviously, with leaving her here is that if I come back next year and something's failed over the winter, there's no access to those parts here. So we're looking into options. I might leave her here and then come back early enough next year that I could sail her down to Dutch Harbour or somewhere with more infrastructure and do sort of the winter work next summer before I set off again. So we're looking at all the options, because at the moment it's not looking like I'll get to Homer quickly at all.
You fixed worse things on this trip than this, so... We've definitely faced our fair share of challenges. I can understand the keenness to get home. Yeah, sort of end of it. On a more positive note, what has been the nicest things you've experienced, or the
so many things.
Take home with you?
I think one of the best things, really, from having planned to do sort of a solo non-stop voyage, and then that going out the window with having to stop, allowed me to then enjoy the community that I found with all the other sailors going through the passage, and to share moments with other people up here. That was definitely an unforeseen aspect, but to be able to, have meals with people like Navarra and Tamara and to enjoy that sailing community. And then the wildlife. I mean, God, I've never seen wildlife like I've seen up here, polar bears and orcas and narwhals. And even now we're getting the northern lights and sailing in the dark now. There's phosphorescence in the water around the boat everywhere you sail. It's just been absolutely magical. Yeah.
Nice. Did you plan to meet up with Tamara on this trip? Did you have any dialogue before you went?
So I actually didn't know that she was doing it. I wasn't aware of her project. It turns out that she'd actually messaged me on Instagram, but because it was after I'd set sail, I couldn't see the message because I didn't have Starlink, no social media access. So she was aware that I'd be around, and then we ended up meeting in Pond Inlet. And at the time, she was traveling in tandem with another boat. So I left Pond Inlet and kept going. But that other boat she was traveling with ended up having an engine problem, which meant they were stuck in Pond Inlet. So Tamara caught me up, and then a couple of times throughout the voyage, we sort of ended up in the same places, traveling in tandem. So that was really cool, really special. Really, I mean, there was one day where there was boats on the radio where every boat had a female captain, of which we were two, and the National Geographic Resolution cruise ship had a female captain, and Navarra, the co-skipper, was a woman. It was an amazing amount of female sailors up here this year.
So cool. No, I had Tamara on the podcast before she did her overwintering.
Oh, okay, awesome.
In Greenland. And I wasn't aware that she was going to do that. And she has a very famous sailing father.
I didn't know about that until after. But
Antarctic. But it looks like Tamara set a goal on being even more famous than her father.
She's doing amazing. Yeah.
That is so cool. There's two young female sailors doing that.
It was unexpected, but very, very welcome surprise for sure.
How was the grounding? Because you ran aground on the
Oh, God,
last
it was the
stretch here.
worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I've never run a boat aground anywhere, let alone in the Northwest Passage. Um, yeah, it was. So again, it was on a day I was sailing with Tamara, and she was a couple of hours ahead of me, and got through that area without any issues. Um, so where I ran the boat aground was an area that was supposed to be chart datum between 2.5 and 3.5 meters. And a bit of higher tide on top of that. So what happened was the area outside of Tuck is all like a river mouth delta. And we had such a violent storm that they said it was the worst storm they'd seen in 40 years. There was over 5 feet of tidal surge during the time we were hiding in Tuck. So when we left, the sort of delta area outside of Tuck had silted and the sandbanks had moved. So yeah, I ended up, Yeva sort of touched the bottom, and I thought, oh shit, and tried to turn around to not go any further. And it was on making the turn to starboard to turn around that I ended up hitting even more of this silted bank that wasn't supposed to be there. So we sort of bounced along the bank, and I was making a call to the Coast Guard to let them know what was going on. And then she floated free, and I put the anchor down because in my panic, I thought there was an issue with the steerage, which turned out not to be an issue, but because I was obviously, alone and aground, not thinking straight. I got a little confused about what was going on with the rudder and the steerage. So the Coast Guard came and picked me up, and we left Yeva at anchor over the evening so that we could come up with a plan. And once I'd got ashore and got some sleep and sort of removed myself from the situation, that's when I realized that I knew what was the issue with the steerage, and it wasn't actually going to be a problem. So we went back the day after, and the Coast Guard boat led a path for Yeva out of there. But even with their shallower draft, they're about 100 meters in front of me, and even the local Coast Guard guys were taking 90-degree turns trying to figure out where they could lead me out of, because we didn't have any accurate information at that point about where the silts and the sandbanks had moved to. So it was very slow. Like little follow the leader sort of exercise out of the shallows. But yeah, they were amazing in their response and their help. Yeah,
that's really nice. How was it to step off Yeva?
It was very uncomfortable for me to leave the boat. But when the Coast Guard ask you to, then you don't really have a say in the matter. So we tried to put out a second anchor. I was really keen on getting a second anchor out, but the conditions were quite rough, and they couldn't get their boat close enough for me to pass an anchor across. They accidentally put their bow through my pulpit railing, trying to get close enough to get me off. But yeah, when the Coast Guard requests that you go with them, you don't turn them down. So it was a very sleepless night as well, back on shore, just worrying about the boat. It might sound silly to people who don't sail, but the boat in my head now it's almost like she's a person, it felt like I was abandoning my teammate out there. So yeah, that was pretty hard.
Yeah, I can understand that. How was she when you came back?
She was totally fine. She was totally fine. She was floating still on her anchor in flat, calm water the next day when we went back. And I knew. So what had happened with the steering was when we touched the bottom, and I tried to turn around, I'd been in the inside helm station, which is hydraulic, and obviously when we touched the bottom, I went to the outside helm to throttle back and take the wheel, and the wheel outside wouldn't turn, and that's why I thought the rudder was broken. But what had happened was I'd just forgotten to change the valve between the hydraulic and the mechanic steering in my panic. Easily done when you're in that sort of mindset of oh shit, not thinking things through clearly. So as soon as I went back, I just changed the valve between the two helm stations, and like magic, it all worked again.
Off you went. Nice.
Luckily, obviously the boat is made of steel. I like to refer to her as my little tank. And we'd just landed on sort of mud and sand, so she was fine.
You mentioned you had your fair share of failures before you came to Greenland. Any anyone during the Northwest Passage, or did it go?
No. The
No.
Northwest Passage, actually, equipment-wise, the only thing that went wrong was the halyard spinner for the Genoa top sort of seized. But that was just a case of dropping it, cleaning it, and putting it back up again, and then that was fine. Which the crew of Navarra did with me. We were at Anchorage in the same place just before the Bellet Strait, and they gave me a hand with that. We managed to iron out the gremlins before the start of the Northwest Passage by taking a couple of weeks in Greenland to fix the stuff that had gone wrong up till that point. And then, the Northwest Passage, the equipment all did what it should have.
Your preparation were perfect.
Yeah, it was definitely, definitely a case that by the time we got there, we'd sorted what we needed to.
Yeah. Very good. And you were talking about your shore crew, which has been very helpful, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I could have pulled it off without them. Certainly without access to resources like internet. We have Iridium, the communications partner of the expedition that I'm doing, and it's amazing in the sense that I can send messages to the shore team and receive photos and messages and weather reports, but there's no Google. So there were times when the shore team could provide very valuable information that I wouldn't have been able to look up myself. My dad worked day in and day out on sending me ice forecasts from our sponsors Drift Plus Noise with the ICC database, and weather forecasts, and then Capital.com, who are sort of the main title partners of the expedition, did a wonderful job of getting videos out on our accounts the whole way through, so people could see what I was up to every day. And then Lee Gallagher and B Woodland, Lee being my designated person ashore, my DPA, and B running the social media accounts for me. Both worked pretty hard for the summer as well. So it's been an amazing amount of support from home. Yeah,
your social media team definitely did a good job for us. Couch sailors following you. It was really good.
Yeah, no, they were amazing. Yeah.
And you said you had Iridium, and most of the other boats had Starlink.
Yeah, all of the other boats.
Bandwidth, that is the big difference here.
Yes.
But you still sent videos.
Yeah, absolutely. We still managed to do all that down the Iridium system. Thanks to sort of software that Capital had built and that sort of stuff. The main reason, there's a few reasons we didn't choose Starlink, none the least because of who owns Starlink.
That is a good reason.
But also because of sanctions in Russia. Starlink doesn't work in Russia. And obviously the point when I left England was to try and complete the Northwest and Northeast passages in a single season. So for that reason, for those reasons, we opted out of Starlink.
Talking about the Northeast, because you had to take the tough decision to not go this year.
So obviously I got all of my permits approved by the Russians and I had a visa and we were all set to go this year. But the amount of issues that went wrong that we've just heard about meant that by the time I'd got to Alaska, we were behind season. We were a couple of weeks later than when I wanted to be there. So I spoke to the Russians about getting an extension to the permit to be in their waters to allow for being late. At which point the Russian Deputy General of Navigation of the Northern Sea Route advised against going because of young ice already starting to reform between the areas between the Kara and the Laptev Seas, which is a stretch of water that you can't avoid. It's the only way through. And he wasn't sure with the speed of the boat and the timings that we'd get through there. So, when the Russian general tells you that he advises you not to, it's less of an advice and more of an order.
It's like the Coast Guard. When they tell you to step aboard, you step aboard.
Absolutely. But he has reassured me that he'd be quite happy to receive another application for a permit for next year. And
nice.
I'm pretty confident we'll get that approved again.
Cool.
So we'll do the Northeast Passage next year instead.
And you're still motivated?
Yeah, absolutely. I have every intention of finishing what I've started. I'm just at a point now, more I think mentally than physically, where I'm exhausted. It's So I think after some rest and some time with family over the winter, I'll be raring to go again. I will definitely finish it. I just would like to go home and have a break at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
I can. What do you have to do with Yeva before you leave her anywhere, actually?
Well, there's not an awful lot of work to be done.
Nope.
I've been going through the boat, sending photos and videos to my surveyor back home and chatting about things. So, we haven't flagged any major issues yet from the walk around I'm doing. I need to get the pulpit railing fixed from where it got bent because my nav lights sit wonky now, so they're not shining where they should do because they're bent. And then, I'll need to winterize the boat. So when she comes out of the water, before she does, I'll have to flush the engine with antifreeze and make sure there's been a recent oil change and all that sort of stuff. The sails will have to come down and everything on deck will have to get stowed inside. And preparing her to spend a winter potentially covered in frost and snow. Just making sure that she's set up properly for that. So when she does come out of the water, I'll have a good sort of week to 10 days of getting her ready to leave. And then I'll be heading home.
Cool. How long is it to Homer? If you're...
From here, I think it's about another 800 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 10 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah, it would take 2 days and a bit to get to Dutch Harbour. Yeah. And then from there, non-stopped, it would be 8 or 9 days, I think, to Homer. But with the weather as it is at the moment, it could take an unforeseeable amount of time trying to get there around all of the pressure systems that are coming through now. So if we can get Yeva out of the island here on St. Paul, then I need to strongly consider it as an option and return instead earlier next year in order to do whatever might need doing then. Or we'll sit here and wait and see if there's ever a suitable weather window to leave. But the community here want to lift their pontoons out of the water this week after this storm has blown through. And all of the fishing boats are out of the water now. You know, the whole season's come to an end and everyone's ready to pack in for the winter. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
What are your expectations for the Northeast Passage compared to this one?
I think, I think realistically it's probably going to be harder in the sense that there won't be the same sort of community and help and company as I was privy to in the Northwest Passage. So between settlements up there that I'm allowed access to, because obviously not every port is open to foreign vessels along the Russian Arctic, we're looking at up to sort of 10 days in between harbours that I might be able to use as points of refuge or equipment servicing. It's going to be a lot more solitary of an adventure. But with everything I've gone through this summer, I'm a lot more prepared for that now than I would have been if, for example, if I'd have started with the Northeast Passage and gone the other way around. I think with the ice navigation, there might be a couple of areas to contend with ice, but having looked at the ice this year in Russia, it was open for most of August and the first week of September. It will take me about 4 or 5 weeks to sail across the top of Russia, and it doesn't look like it will be as intense as sort of 40 hours navigating through, 4/10 covering. It should be a relatively coastal sail. And I'm hoping that there's more of a breeze in the Northeast Passage than there was in the Northwest Passage. For that same reason that it's coastal, there's a lot less islands to contend with. There are a few, but it's nowhere near as complicated in that sense as the Northwest Passage. So I'm looking forward to it. Very much hoping to see some of the incredible wildlife again, like the bears. There's a huge polar bear population in East Siberia. But it will be, definitely a lot more of a solitary adventure next year than this one.
Yes. Have you, you know how much time you spent sailing versus engine? during the Northwest Passage?
I haven't done the tally up yet, but I've been
No.
keeping a book on board. So obviously we've got the logbook, but then I've also got an engine hours book. So I will once I know that I'm done for the winter, wherever we end up, then I'll be able to work that one out. Before I got to the Northwest Passage, it had been more sailing than motoring. Through the Northwest Passage, it was more motoring than sailing.
Yeah.
So it'll depend what's happened between Nome and here or Homer as to whether that averages out to half and half again or not. So we'll see. But yeah, the Northwest Passage definitely isn't a sailor's playground.
No,
isn't. Which was...
How did you manage with diesel?
So I made the decision before I left England to convert one of my water tanks into another fuel tank.
Yeah, you did.
So Yeva, including the jerry cans on deck, she carries 840 litres of fuel. So we did pretty well. We topped up a couple of times, but I never was worried about running out. I just made the decision when I was in harbour where I could get fuel to top up anyway, because you never know if the next community is going to have some, or you get there and the fuel truck's broken down, and so if I could get diesel in port, I would fill the tanks up again just to make sure that we could get past the next place if we had to. But not too bad.
You were pretty much forced to stop the non-stop navigation of your trip, but in hindsight, do you think that was a good thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it made the whole summer more enjoyable for me. And I managed to get out of it something that I wouldn't have been able to if I was doing it non-stop. So, for example, when I stopped in Cambridge Bay, the captain of the National Geographic Resolution invited me on board, and I ended up giving a talk about the campaign to all of the the guests and the crew on the ship. But unbeknownst to me, on that ship was the mayor of Cambridge Bay, and he listened to the talk that I was giving. And he then pulled me aside for a conversation at the end and asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved with the annual AGM meeting for all of the Nunavut head of the communities throughout the Northwest Passage, and get involved with decision making about legislation and what we want to see in the Northwest Passage changes, in light of the climate change that's happening and the increasing shipping traffic. He was keen to get me involved with sitting down and having some of those discussions with the locals, which was super cool. It was cool. Nice to be able to get into the communities that I was sailing through and have a better understanding of what life up here is like for people that are here all the time.
And that is one of the big reasons you're doing it, was doing it in the first place, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. The whole campaign has always been about raising awareness for the Arctic. And it's going to help me raise awareness by having a better understanding of what life is like here for those local communities. So, it was definitely, I think, a better project than it would have been if I'd just tried to sail through nonstop. I got more out of it, and hopefully can then give more back and raise better awareness because of it.
Very cool. Do you think I'm not sure, have anyone done it nonstop? Solo?
I'm not sure whether the Northwest Passage has been done nonstop solo.
I don't think so.
The circumnavigation obviously hasn't.
Nope.
Yeah, not sure. Don't think so.
No. You think it's possible?
Yeah, I think on a faster boat with less problematic equipment failures, I think it would be possible. I think when we say non-stop, I think you'd still have to include anchoring in that.
Yeah.
I do think it would be. I think it certainly will be in the future. Anyway. Yeah.
With the ice melting. Did you see a lot of ice?
Yes, actually in the Amundsen Gulf we did, because we had pretty consistent winds from the north for weeks and weeks. So a lot of the ice that was melting and shearing off from the inner Arctic, the northern Arctic, was being blown right down to the coast and into the Amundsen Gulf. It was an area that I think most of the boats struggled with the most for ice, and that's where I spent 40 hours at the helm navigating through it. By that point as well, we were getting night times again, which meant that in the dark, God, you couldn't see where it was to save your life. I mean, there were times when I had the radar set to 236 meters, like the smallest radius the radar can give in the dark, and the whole screen was yellow with flows. So I ended up having to actually just stop the boat overnight and let her drift, sort of, around in circles, just while I waited for the sun to come back up so I could see where I was going around the damn stuff.
Scary?
Not scary in the sense that it was flat calm. So you and the ice are drifting the same way on the tide. You're not gonna damage the boat if you touch a piece doing half a knot with the tide. Uncomfortable in the sense that it is an unusual experience for sure.
Yeah. Did you get to sleep?
In those cases I didn't.
No. And it's still too much noise, isn't it? With the ice.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually one of my, I don't know whether I should say proud, one of my proudest feats, that I made it the whole way through the Northwest Passage without touching a single piece of ice. So I've heard from other crew what it can sound like driving into it. But maybe I was being overly cautious in those senses, and that's probably why I didn't get as much sleep as I could have. But we made it through quite safely in that sense.
Well, that's the general advice.
Yeah.
And avoid ice at all costs. So, you
absolutely.
did it. Even in a tank.
Even in my little tank, yeah.
Really cool.
Thank you.
I'm going to let you go back to have some rest, Ella. Thank you so much for joining me. And again, I'm deeply impressed what you've achieved. It's a big achievement to say.
Thank you.
I think Passage alone.
Yeah, I think it'll sink in when I can relax for the winter. At the moment, I'm still very much focused on the boat and mine's safety and getting somewhere to stop. But once I have, then I'll let it soak in. But thank you so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
Cool. And good luck with towing Yeva on land somewhere.
Thank you. Well, we'll chat again before or after the Northeast Passage, I hope.
Oh yeah, we will chat again. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hi again, sailors, and thank you for listening to this podcast. You will find more podcasts on explorenorth.no, both in Norwegian and in English. If you want to know more about sailing in cold waters, I can highly recommend, without blushing, the book I wrote together with Bob Shepton. It's called, surprise, surprise, High Latitude Sailing, Self-Sufficient Sailing Techniques for Cold Waters and Winter Seasons. It covers pretty much everything you need to know to get out sailing the whole year round and sailing to remote places in the world. You'll find it, you can buy the book on explorenorth.no, on Amazon, or have your bookstore order it. If you're interested in Svalbard, I also wrote Sail to Svalbard. You can buy them at the same places. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions at all. You'll find me on explorenorth.no. In the meantime, go out sailing.